Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the final bi-monthly monetary policy post-press conference for this fiscal year. I would like to start by welcoming Deputy Governor Acharya to his first press conference. It feels good to have a full management team. Before I request the other DGs to say something, I'll speak for a couple of minutes. In this policy review, which you have all seen, a clear assessment of the evolving macroeconomic configuration, at least in the short run, remains clouded by the transitory effects of demonetization. To elucidate, the CSO has stated categorically that it has used information for only the first 7 months of the year while making its advance estimates for 2016-17. On the inflation front, transient factors, including anecdotal evidence on fire sales of perishables, have discolored an objective assessment on inflation pressures. For example, if vegetables are excluded, CPI inflation would exceed the CSO's official print for the month of December, which was of 3.4%, by as much as 140 basis points. In these highly uncertain conditions, the Monetary Policy Committee exercised abundant prudence in keeping the policy rate on hold while seeing of these transient effects and awaited a clearer and unbiased assessment of inflation. Looking ahead, the committee is dedicated to achieving the target of 4% CPI headline inflation while keeping in mind the objective of growth as mandated by the amendment of the RBI Act and the Gazette notification. In fact, the notification states that the target has become effective since August 2016, and it is in this context that the committee has made an explicit commitment to the target in this resolution. The committee was fully cognizant of the lags through which monetary policy typically operates. It was also sensitive to the need for a calibrated approach to the target, thereby minimizing the collateral costs of achieving it. Therefore, it decided to shift the stance of monetary policy from accommodative to neutral to give us sufficient flexibility to move in either direction, and to keep in its consideration a reasonable time horizon over which inflation needs to be brought closer to the target of 4% within the notified band. In the view of the committee, timely and effective transmission of policy rate reductions by banks is a critical part of this calibrated strategy, and accordingly it has set out 3 guideposts to improve the efficacy of transmission: quick and efficient resolution of NPAs, a speedier recapitalization of public sector banks, and full implementation of the formula for determining interest rates on small savings. I'll now request Deputy Governor Gandhi to say a few words. Gandhi ji.
Thank you, sir. In the wake of the withdrawal of the specified bank notes since 9th November 2016, the bank had placed limits on cash withdrawals from certain types of bank accounts. On a review of the pace of remonetization, the Reserve Bank partially restored status quo ante effective from 1st February 2017 by removing the restrictions on cash withdrawal from current accounts and cash credit accounts and withdrawal through ATMs. However, the limits on cash withdrawal from savings bank accounts continue to be in place. In line with the pace of remonetization, it has now been decided to remove these limits in 2 stages as follows. Effective from 20th February 2017, the limits on cash withdrawals from the savings bank accounts will be enhanced to rupees 50,000 per week from the current limit of 24,000 rupees per week. Effective from 13th March 2017, there will be no limits prescribed by the Reserve Bank on cash withdrawals from savings bank accounts. Thank you. 13th March.
Request Deputy Governor Mundra.
I would touch upon a couple of things, and as you must have seen in the second part of the policy statement also, Cyber security had been a major area of focus of Reserve Bank of India, and to that end, some time back, an expert committee was constituted, headed by our Executive Director, Srimati Meena Hemchandra, which deliberated and gave a number of recommendations, which culminated into RBI issuing a very comprehensive circular to all the banks on 2nd June 2016, giving certain parameters to do the gap assessment of their cyber security preparedness, and then it is a process which will be ongoing process. But having regard to continuing need to be vigilant towards the cyber security areas in existing systems as well as the emerging threats, it has now been decided to constitute a standing committee on cyber security. It will be a cross-functional. It will also have the industry experts as well as the government representative, and other details would be announced in due course. Other matter is around the asset quality of banking system. While we yet to receive the result from all the banks for the Q3, but based on the results which are announced already and on the basis of provisional data available, broad trend is, while there is some elevation in gross NPA ratio in the banking system across the category, whether it is public sector banks or private sector banks, but I think for the first time in few quarters, this time it is seen that in few banks the ratio has come down vis-a-vis the preceding quarter. Similarly, in respect of net NPA, consistent with gross NPA, while there will be an elevation, but in a large number of banks, the ratio has come down, which is clearly showing that the level of provisioning is quite adequate. Also, there had been conversion of restructured assets falling into NPA category, and as a result, across the industry, there is a reduction in the percentage of restructured assets. Overall, the system has shown improvement in operating profit, but on the back of higher provisioning, I think some of the pressures on net profit would continue. And finally, on the capital adequacy, while most of the banks are well placed to meet the regulatory norms as they are required at this point of time, but going forward, quite a few banks would be required to raise the additional capital. Thank you.
DG Vishwanathan, please.
Good afternoon. I just want to mention about a point made in the part 2 again. That's regarding the setting up of an enforcement department. Enforcement, of course, is an integral part of the supervisory process. We do take enforcement action even now, but a focused attention to this, we believe, will improve the regulatory compliance going forward. So we are setting up an enforcement department effective 1st April 2017, into which we will fold the enforcement action that the bank is taking across various functionalities, so that we complete focus. This, we believe, will improve the overall regulatory framework and compliance of the country. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, hello everyone. I just wanted to make 2 points. As you've seen, we've shifted the stance from accommodative to neutral as far as the monetary policy is concerned. I think this is mainly driven by our concern about global inflation that is picking up, especially on fuel and metal side. I think there is also a risk that this could be coupled with a strengthening of the dollar, and it could feed into significant inflation for our economy. So unless you believe that the food inflation is really, or the food deflation is really here to stay, I think I think your expectation would be more based on the core CPI, which has been very sticky. Now, why did we hold rates though? I think it's because the only other reason to lower the rate, given what I just said about the inflation outlook, would be to try and narrow the output gap that's been created by the recent events. We think that both fast remonetization that's taking place, as well as the balanced budget, balanced in the sense of being austere as well as reallocating to growth-focused capital expenditures should actually aid in narrowing the output gap. And in fact, the way the monetary policy would work is by transmitting this through banks to the lending rates or borrowing rates for corporations. But much of this has actually taken place thanks to demonetization because of banks being flooded with easy money. So nevertheless, we await greater data to know whether the impacts of demonetization are going to be truly transient, and therefore we remain fully flexible, and therefore we've kept the rates on hold.
Thank you very much. I will take a few questions now. May I request Aaj Tak?
That's surprising that Aaj Tak is first. Okay. सर दो सवाल आपसे, एक तो ये कि कई बैंकों ने कुछ ही दिनों में एमसी लेंडिंग रेट्स काफ़ी कम कर दिए हैं, तो क्या अभी भी कोई गुंजाइश है कि और भी आम आदमी को या आम कस्टमर्स को और भी लेंडिंग रेट्स कम हो सकते हैं? और दूसरा सवाल आपसे ये करना चाहूँगा कि नोटबंदी का एक रीज़न ये भी था कि फेक करेंसी को काफ़ी हद तक हम कम कर दें सिस्टम से, लेकिन पिछले दो तीन इंसिडेंट्स ऐसे आए हैं जिसमें फेक करेंसीज एक बार फिर मार्केट में आ गए हैं, तो क्या आपको लगता है कि आपका पूरा जो ऑब्जेक्टिव था वो फुलफिल होता हुआ दिख रहा है आपको?
करेंसी के क्वेश्चन के लिए मैं गांधी साहब को.
The new notes which have been brought on board, rupees 2000 and rupees 500, they have enhanced security design features. So that is not easy to copy. The recent ones which we have seen, that is a pure photocopy. So it is not real counterfeiting. So this photocopying, yes, it is easy for even a common man to easily identify. It will be possible for them to be not to be duped very easily. They can identify.
So in one incident in the border.
One question, just one question, please. No, one question, please. Let me answer your first question. There is still scope for the lending rates to come down because our policy rate came down by 175 basis points, and the weighted average lending rate has come down at most by about 85-90 basis points. So I think there is scope for some more transmission. For some borrowers, the healthy borrowers, sound borrowers for housing finance, etc., they have already benefited from it. So that's where we are on that. May I now request Dow Jones, please?
Governor, hi. You mentioned here, the committee mentions here, the uncertainty that surrounds the direction of U.S. macroeconomic policies with potential global spillovers. So could you tell us a bit more about that beyond the strengthening of the dollar that has already been mentioned? And how do you think that is going to affect India specifically?
So I think there are several global developments. One, continuing uncertainty on the upside over oil prices. There might be enhanced geopolitical reasons, Iran, etc. Base metal prices have gone up internationally. The food index, by the way, global food index has gone up. So there's more than one channel of global spillovers, and then the continuing uncertainty, which of course always adds a risk premium on a full rollout of U.S. macroeconomic policies, especially on the fiscal side, where we still await clarity, and given the general tendency to roll back some of the extra accommodative monetary policies by the systemic central banks of the world, I think there is enough global uncertainty to go around. Viral, do you want to add anything? No. Okay. May I request Govardhan?
Govardhan from the Economic Times. Sir, for the next fiscal second half, the inflation is projected at 5%, 4.5 to 5%, for which global oil prices and the financial market developments are cited. At the same time, the demonetization impact is attributed to be transient. So why is there a shift in stance to neutral? Why couldn't it have been still accommodative if it is only transient?
The main reasons are the following, that the committee wanted to emphasize that in a calibrated manner, and therefore to make it on a durable basis, that we need to move closer to 4. Secondly, the non-food, non-fuel part of the CPI index has been stubborn at about 4.8, 4.9 since September, and therefore that is the kind of risk that's there. And if you combine that with the other risks we have told you about, as I said in the opening statement, that as abundant precaution, the committee felt that we needed all the flexibility that we could muster. May I request Cogensis?
Thank you, sir. Bijoy from Cogensis. So a couple of things. One is you mentioned the liquidity overhang from the demonetization. You say that it'll continue into FY18. What does that mean for your neutral stance on liquidity? Also, because you spoke about all the global elements, what happens to the real interest rate discussion that you had raised last time and the 1.25 that you all had moved to, these two elements coming together?
Yeah, we expect liquidity to be evening out. It's already started doing that because currency in circulation has gone into positive territory. There will be residual liquidity surplus during the rest of the year and a little bit into the early part of the year, but that's not so much due to demonetization as it is due to the fiscal policy being played out and all that. On the real interest rate, I think you mean the natural rate of interest. Yeah, so that doesn't change every time we meet, right? So we set out our range, 1.25 to 1.75, and stays there. And if you make your calculations, taking any risk-free rate and the forward inflation rate, you will come into that range.
Doordarshan?
Sir, in total, the new notes, how many of new notes of 2,500 have been circulated? And we're still seeing the effect of demonetization is there. So how long for a common man to end the suffering?
March 13th. Yeah.
The notes in circulation as of 27th January 2017, it had been 9.92 lakh crores of rupees, comprising of all the denominations, including the 2000s and 500s.
We don't usually give that information out, and Deputy Governor Gandhi has already laid out the two-step process by which we are easing the situation. Financial Times?
Hi, I was interested in the remarks about the NPAs, which obviously have been at quite elevated levels at several of the banks for some time now. I was wondering if we could get your thoughts on how big a problem this is for the economy. You speak to some people and they say, well, demand for credit is not that high, so perhaps it's not as big as a problem as one might think. But you clearly have voices on the other side as well. So how big a problem is this NPA problem for the economy? And what will it take to really draw a line under it? Thank you.
Yeah, I think the numbers are out there. I think the problem in an absolute sense is quite large. And I think it requires a significant recapitalization of the banking system, especially the public sector banks. But I think it also requires, I think, speedy and efficient resolution of the non-performing assets, the stressed assets. And I think it's easy to use the words demand and supply, but usually they are very hard to separate out. If you have a sector where you overlend as a banking sector as a whole, and then things come crashing down, usually that leaves the sector with excess capacity, and there, of course, there won't be demand. So I think it's hard to say this is just a pure supply and demand, sort of we can separate these out. I think if we resolve the NPAs of banks, it will probably actually help restore some of the capacity utilization in this sector by actually reducing some of the excess capacity. That might actually create healthy conditions for investment in these sectors. It might create pickup, and at the same time banks, because of the resolution of NPAs, might be able to consider beginning to start lending to these same sectors again.
So you can see to some extent it's holding back industrial activity?
I would say that, yes. But let me...
No, as Dr. Acharya already mentioned, These are the known figures that the level of stressed assets in the industry is slightly above 20% if we put GNPA, restructured and all those things. So it would not be fair to say that there is no concern. There is concern, but as generally it is referred to as a twin balance sheet problem. So focusing only on the bank's balance sheet and talking about the gross NPA ratio, that is the one part of it, and which, as you are aware, RBI has been focused on this for quite some time, and as a result of that continuously provisioning, I think that has to some extent equipped the banks to deal with those accounts. But obviously, this concern would be completely addressed with the other side of the twin balance sheet problem, that while it is good that the weaknesses have been recognized, provisions have been built, but I think key would be the resolution. For resolution, number of tools have already been given by RBI in past year and a half, and under each of these mechanisms, quite a few number of cases have been taken up by the banking industry where they are working. The other important development in this will be around the bankruptcy code, which I think it will be very important that it becomes operationalized soon. Our sense is that a combined use of these tools, which would be very case specific and specific to individual entities, is something which we will continue to monitor.
सर अनुराग फ्रॉम जी बिजनेस सर। सर जब हम खबरें देखते हैं जहाँ तक बताया जाता है कि जो डिमोनेटाइजेशन के बाद जो पुरानी करेंसी है, तो कई बार लोग खबरें आती है कि 98% पुरानी करेंसी आ गई, कई बार बोलते हैं कि जिससे ज़्यादा भी आ गई। तो सर आप एक बता सकते हैं, क्योंकि पिछली पॉलिसी में बताया था कि पुराने नोट कितने वापस आ गए हैं, तो अभी तक का वो आंकड़ा बता पाए। और सर जिस तरह से बैंकों के अंदर और बैंकिंग अधिकारियों के बीच में गड़बड़ी हुई है, तो एक आम आदमी का भरोसा जो है बैंकिंग पे थोड़ा कम हुआ है, तो उनके लिए एक मैसेज देना चाहेंगे आप एक आम आदमी के लिए कि अभी भी जो हमारी बैंकिंग प्रणाली है, बैंकें हैं, वो एकदम सुदृढ़ है और एकदम ठीक से है?
देखिए, पहली आपका दूसरा प्रश्न पहले लेता हूँ। ये एक तो आपको पूरी तरह आश्वासन देना चाहता हूँ रिजर्व बैंक की तरफ से, भारत की बैंकिंग प्रणाली बिल्कुल सुदृढ़ है, और अगर कोई 2-4 घटनाएं इधर उधर हुई हैं तो उनको लेके एक ऐसा कयास करना कि बैंकिंग पद्धति में कमजोरी आ गई है, ये सही सोचना नहीं होगा। आपने जो बात कही वो भी अगर आप देखें कि पूरी बैंकिंग इंडस्ट्री में कितनी शाखाएं हैं, कितने लोग काम कर रहे हैं, मैं ये नहीं कहता कि कुछ केसेस नहीं हुए हैं, थोड़े बहुत केसेस हुए, लेकिन अगर आप पूरा उसका अगर विस्तार देखें तो मेरे ख्याल से इनका जो प्रतिशत है वो बहुत नगण्य है, वेरी नॉट सिग्निफिकेंट। एंड इन ऑल दोज केसेज, उन सारे केसों में कार्रवाई की गई है, काफ़ी लोगों को सस्पेंड भी किया गया है, और आम तौर पे अगर देखा जाए तो जो आम आदमी के लिए बैंकिंग व्यवस्था ने इस पूरे 2 महीने के पीरियड में जिस ढंग से ड्यूटी से बढ़कर काम किया है, मैं सोचता हूं कि आप सब लोग, हालांकि ये कुछ केस आप ज़रूर बोलते हैं और बोलते रहते हैं, लेकिन मेरे ख्याल से आप सबकी भी नैतिक जिम्मेदारी है कि वो जो मेजॉरिटी है जिन्होंने इतना जुड़ के अपनी ड्यूटी के बाहर काम किया है, उनके प्रति भी कभी कुछ प्रशंसा किया करें। वो तो बात हुई आपके जो दूसरा प्रश्न था। पहला प्रश्न वो आंकड़ा उसकी काम चाली है, और आप समझेंगे कि देखिए पूरे देश में 4000 करेंसी चेस्ट है, इसके अलावा रिज़र्व बैंक 19 जगह करेंसी रखती है। इन सारे चेस्ट और रिज़र्व बैंक के बीच में करेंसी का आना जाना होता है, तो ये सारी जब 30 दिसंबर के पश्चात एक मोटे तौर पे जो हमने सब बैंकों को कैलकुलेट करने के लिए कहा था, उसके बाद रिज़र्व बैंक की टीम ने भी उसको सैंपल बेसिस पे उसकी चेकिंग की है, वो प्रक्रिया पूरी हो गई है। अकाउंटिंग खातों से जो कैश फिजिकल है उसका रिकन्सिलेशन जारी है, तो ये काम आशा करते हैं हम कि अगले कुछ समय में ये काम पूरा हो जाएगा। इसके अलावा 2-3 चीज़ें हैं जो अभी भी ओपन एंडेड हैं, जो अभी खुली रहेंगी, क्योंकि जो कुछ समय शुरू में कोऑपरेटिव बैंक्स ने जो केस लिया था और जिसके विषय में सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने भी अपने निर्देश दिए हैं, तो नाबार्ड उस बारे में काम करेगा, तो वो आंकड़ा हमें अपने खाते में लेना होगा। हमारे देश के नेपाल और भूटान के साथ जो अरेंजमेंट हैं, जो व्यवस्था है, उसके अंतर्गत कुछ करेंसी नेपाल और भूटान में होगी, जिसे भी हमें अपने आंकड़ों में लेना होगा। और इसके अलावा 31 मार्च तक और 30 जून तक ये अभी जो विंडो है ये अभी भी खुली हुई है कि जिसमें कि लोग अभी कैश दे सकते हैं। तो इन सारे चीज़ों को जोड़ के और इसके पश्चात ये आंकड़ा हम ज़रूर बताएंगे। लेकिन जो एक फाइनल वेरिफिकेशन होता है पीस टू पीस, ये तो आप जानेंगे कि इतनी बड़ी मात्रा में करेंसी आई है, इसमें अपना समय लगेगा और वो फिर ड्यू कोर्स में बताया जाएगा।
Mint.
So this is Gopika from Mint. You spoke about the resolution of NPAs. The economic survey this time mentioned setting up of a bad bank. Is the Reserve Bank considering this? Considering Professor Acharya also, Dr. Acharya also had recommended such a move earlier.
I think we have to remain open to all solutions at this point because I think the problem is quite large. I don't think a bad bank just by itself will necessarily work. I think it has to be designed right. The big piece of the problem is, can you get the bank to sell the assets at the right price to ARCs and private investors who want to come in? How to get that right price to come in using a portfolio or a bad bank kind of approach, I think that's going to be key. We are going to be thinking about what kind of design issues might help with that, but we think it is something that if designed properly could help. But Mr. Vishwanathan might want to add something.
As Dr. Acharya said, all options are open. Fundamentally, it's a question of structuring the whole thing and again finding the right price. So we'll have to take a call after the whole thing. So there's no dogmatic view one way or the other.
Thank you very much.